The sands whisper of a journey across time.
I'm Joshua, and this is the year of the camel on an FM podcasts.
The sound of Arabia.
Camel racing is a centuries-old racing event which has been practiced as a traditional Middle Eastern sport since medieval times. It can be at least traced back to the 7th century CE, Arabian Peninsula, where it was a sport practiced at social gatherings and festivals. Camel racing, sport of running camels at speed with a rider astride over a predetermined course. The sport is generally limited to running the dromedary, whose name is derived from the Greek verb dramein, or to run, rather than the Bactrian camel. Camels are customarily used as a means of transportation and are reared for their meat, milk, and hides. Camel racing is, of course, as old as history itself. On the Arabian Peninsula, the native habitat of the dromedary camel, it could be traced to at least the early Islamic period in the 7th century CE, although many scholars believe it is much older. Camels can run at speeds up to 65 kilometers an hour in short sprints, and they can maintain a speed of 40 kilometers an hour for about an hour. They are characterized by having one hump, a long neck, and strong shoulders and legs. The weight of each of these camels ranges from about 500 to 600 kilograms. In addition, racing camels are distinguished by their thin and agile bodies, lightness of movement, fast running, endurance, and response to training. On the Arabian Peninsula, camel racing has come to be recognized as a serious international sport and a great tourist attraction. Events draw participants from throughout the world, and winners of races receive handsome prizes, including large cash awards. Moreover, those Arab countries that are the sport's core participants, such events reflect the cultural background of their local society. Traditional costumes and rituals are displayed, and the entire day of racing culminates in celebrations that evoke the customs of local peoples. These gatherings help keep local customs alive, particularly for the younger generation. This tradition of impromptu and informal competition continued in Arabia and elsewhere until the final 3 decades of the 20th century, when interested parties began to organize camel racing into a formal sport, similar to the establishment of the thoroughbred horse racing competitions. Organizations were established to govern and control camel racing events and to formulate rules and regulations. In countries as diverse as Kenya, Sudan, Egypt, India, and even Australia, but particularly in Arab countries of the Middle East, the sport became extremely popular, spawning its own training, breeding, and research industries. Camel racing, a social practice and festive heritage associated with camels, is a popular social practice in the communities concerned. Preparing the racing camels involves several stages. Camels are selected based on type, origin, and age and are given a special diet. They practice on the racetrack in groups and are trained to take part in the races. Camel racing is conducted on specially designed fields under the supervision of specialized community committees. Usually there are about 15 and 20 racing camels in each round, and the racing distance is determined based on the camel's age. There are recognized community traditions, customs, and principles governing the races, and community practices, and a preparation committee verifies the camel's origin. The related knowledge and skills are transmitted thanks to the combined efforts of community representatives, government institutions, specialized centers, and the Federation of Racing and Camel Clubs. Children and young people gradually acquire knowledge and skills related to the practice through observation, simulation, and oral expressions. Camel racing is a fundamental part of their nomadic lifestyle and a source of inspiration in poetry and singing. Its importance and continuity in Bedouin society is connected to the prominent role camels play in the desert environment. Depending on the competition, there are different categories and racing conditions. For instance, in Al-Ula, for the Al-Ula Camel Cup, one day saw jockeys race of 6 rounds, 5 kilometers for men and 2 kilometers for women. Day 2 saw races featuring the Hagaik races for 4 kilometers and 2 Lagaya races of 5 kilometers. Day 3 saw 2 Jitha races of 6 kilometers and 2 Thania races of 8 kilometers. Finally, on day 4, spectators enjoyed a race with the elite Hail and Zumul races, each with a distance of 8 kilometers. Camels typically race in separate rounds based on gender, both male and female camels competing in their respective categories. However, there are occasionally mixed rounds where both genders race together. To ensure fairness, camels participating in each round are matched by age, promoting equal opportunities for all contestants. Additionally, camels are grouped into categories based on their known performance levels, ensuring that those with proven abilities don't compete against less experienced or unproven camels. That said, there are also open rounds where camels of any skill level can compete, offering greater competition and providing valuable racing experience to newcomers. Most races are categorized by the age of camels. There are many levels and many phases of training camels. In stage 1, which is the stage dedicated to taming camels, the first stage of taming begins with the camel reaching the age of 3. At this stage, the camel is restrained by tying its head with a rope, the other end of which is fastened to a tree stump or to a stick or another sturdy object. Initially, the camel will resist and try to free itself by relying on its strength, but eventually, after multiple attempts, it gives in and accepts the restraint. And this is how the end of the first stage comes together, is when the camel accepts the restraint. In stage 2, they introduce the saddle. In the second stage, a wooden structure called the shaddad is introduced. This is placed on the camel's back, positioned between its neck and hump. A padded material made from palm fibers is placed between the hump and the tail for comfort, secured with a rope called al-muhqaba. In stage 3, the camel is taught to follow commands, while tied to previously trained camels. The trainer sits on the camel that is being tamed and uses a stick to guide its movements, teaching the camel to respond to directions. Gradually, the camel is trained to walk and then run at a slow pace, still tied to the training camel, until it becomes more comfortable with the process. In stage 4, there's speed training. In the final stage, the camel is trained to run at higher speeds. During this period, its water intake is reduced and it is fed a diet of clover and fresh milk to build strength. The training begins with short runs of about 2 kilometers and gradually increases to longer distances, reaching up to 10 kilometers. Initially, the camel trains with a saddle, but eventually it runs without one. After this phase, camels enter preliminary competitions where the best performers are selected to compete in actual races. Camel races are also popular in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, Egypt, Sudan, Somalia, Australia, and even the United States of America.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the Year of the Camel. Until next time, this is Joshua Van Alstyne, signing off on the Al-Ula FM podcast's The Sound of Arabia.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating insights on the Year of the Camel.